continue. So I guess the first question is, what is alt text? So alternative text, or more commonly known as alt text, is used within HTML code or more recently on social media to describe the appearance and function of an image on a page or in your social feed. Its primary purpose is to describe images to visitors who are unable to see them. So this includes people who use screen readers and browsers that will block images, but also includes users who are sight impaired or otherwise unable to visually identify an image. So including alt text with your images is an important practice that ensures all users, regardless of visual ability, can appreciate the content on your site. A little fun fact, according to WebAIM's 2021 Million Report, an annual accessibility analysis of the top 1 million homepages found that missing alt text is the second most common cause of website accessibility failures. So definitely something that is huge in the digital world today. So why is alt text important? Like I said earlier, it describes images for visitors that can't see them, people with visual impairments using screen readers, or users on image blocking browsers. But regardless of someone's ability to visually see an image, is a good practice to have. It can also boost your search engine optimization, more commonly known as SEO. Leaving your alt text blank allows search engines to take the liberty to make the call on what you're showing, and allows them to fill that space with what they assume the image is or what its purpose is. And so search crawlers can often miss the mark here. Having alt text can help you show up in more tailored search results. So allowing you to show up in the searches where you want to be seen and not where you don't want to be seen. So some best practices, just a little bit of guidance on what to write and when. So how to write good alt text. Most important is be informative and clear. Something that we really push is front loading the most important information you have using simple and precise language. So screen readers can actually, or users who use screen readers have the opportunity to skip alt text. So when you're presenting important information through an image, you want to make sure that the most important stuff goes out first. That way, if they do decide to skip, they're still getting everything that they need to. Another thing is to use proper spelling, grammar, and punctuation. So screen readers often read as a human would. So any grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, the screen reader is going to make those mistakes as it's reading. So definitely QA your alt text and make sure that you're following proper grammar rules. Another thing, spell out your acronyms. That way people are 100% sure of what you're getting across. Another thing is to specify whether your image is an illustration, a sketch, or a headshot. For example, a headshot of Nate McCraven, something like that. Next is be neutral. Another important thing is to try and be a reporter and only state the facts. We really want to try and avoid interpreting thoughts and feelings because everyone has different thoughts and feelings. So just tell them what's there and try and avoid interpreting anything. And while you do want to specify whether it's an illustration, sketch, or headshot, you really want to avoid using photo of or image of. This is redundant because when a screen reader gets to your image, the user is already going to know that they're coming upon an image, so it's just redundant. You also want to avoid using line breaks and repeating information again. Don't use the same alt text as the text on the page. Again, it's redundant and could potentially annoy a user. So there are 3 different types of images. There are functional images. So these are images that have a real purpose and can be interactive. For example, they link to a new page. So you want to use your alt attribute to communicate the destination of the link or action taken. So my example is a standalone email icon could have the alt text of send an email to info@ibetcreative.com. That way someone knows exactly what's going to happen when they click on the image. Decorative images like the beautiful circle in the top right are images that are there strictly for visual aesthetic. They don't add any context to the page. They're just there to make the page look better. So for this, you want to use an empty alt attribute. That doesn't mean don't use any alt attribute. That just means have the alt text equal nothing in the quotes. It's still important to make sure that you have that alt text there, but having it empty is okay in this instance. Lastly is informative images. So these are a lot of what you're going to see on websites. So these are images that contribute to the understanding of a web page or website. For these images, you want to use a brief description of the image in a way that really conveys the meaning of the image and why it's there. So for example, an e-commerce site for Allbirds could have the alt text, "A person jogs through a city wearing white Allbirds." There, especially for e-commerce sites, you want to specify your product. Yeah. Moving on to extended descriptions.
So extended descriptions are a variant of alt text. You normally want to use it in addition to whenever you have an image that just has a lot of data packed into it. So say like any graph, any pie charts, maybe even like an image of a certain species on like a scientific website, and you just really want to describe that image. So these descriptions are also generally pretty helpful for all users, whether they're using screen readers or not. There's a few different ways that they can be added, whether they just live on the page itself, maybe just like directly below the image, whether they link out to an entirely separate page. But these essentially tend to be paragraphs or like one to multiple paragraphs and more than alt text, which is generally between like 1 and 3 sentences. Going into an example. So this is a little more dev focused, but here's an example of maybe the code you would write for it. So we have an image, we have a source tag, we have our alt tag, which is still filled and describes that there is a chart and covers the variables and just saying how it's comparing the relations. And then we have an aria described by tag, and this points to an ID, and that ID is referred to in a paragraph below. That actually is the extended description that then goes into reviewing the actual data.
Yeah, so for example, if you were looking at this graph on a website, this paragraph would typically fall underneath the image and just small text to give the user some context behind it. So which text alternative should you use? It's super important that even if you're using an extended description, you always want to use an alt attribute tag alt text because that alt text is still important to showing the user what the image is of. While the extended description does go into more detail, the alt text still very important. So alt text is going to be used for simple images, relatively brief, stuff that's obvious, very general visual information. And when you want to control the purpose of your content for both users and for search engine optimization. Extended descriptions are used when there's more than 2 sentences. Usually these images are very complex, relatively showcasing data or detailed visual information. And they're going to be much longer than your normal alt text. So moving into some examples of how we would write alt text for images. So I have 3 examples. The first example is not the best. There's no grammar or the H isn't capitalized at the beginning of the sentence. Very vague. Also, it uses the word happy. And like we said earlier, we don't want to interpret any emotions or feelings. So in example 2 and 3, instead it says a woman smiling. That's a fact, and you can present that. So options 2 and 3 are both very good and could be used in different instances. So option 2 gives you a little bit more information. You kind of get a feel of what's going on. And then option 3 goes into more detailed information on what the woman is wearing and her surroundings. So just looking at these 3, I'm going to put the image up. I think for this one, we can all agree that number 2 or 3 is a great description. And we could, before even seeing the image, we could kind of visualize what would be there. Moving into example number 2, again, we have 3 different options. 1, again, the W in woman isn't capitalized. There's no punctuation, very vague. It also uses the word cute. While this isn't interpreting any emotions, cute is a very subjective term to everybody. Well, one person finds cute, another person might not. So for that, we're going to that this is probably a bad example of alt text. Number 2 and 3, again, are both good examples, and both could be used in different situations. So for option number 2, it goes into what the woman is wearing, and where she is. She's outside. So we get a very general idea of what this image could look like. But number 3 is really key for any e-commerce brand. Here it specifies that she is wearing an organic chambray shift dress. That's a specific product for the company. And then how the dress is layered, how she's wearing it, and how a person might be able to see themselves wearing it. So again, looking at the image now, our favorite is number 3, just because this is an e-commerce site, and it's giving the user a better idea of how they could style the dress in that way. But both 2 and 3 are good options here.
So now moving into how to actually apply alt text across a few most popular platforms. So here we have Facebook. So alt text on social media. Facebook's interesting. It automatically generates its own alt text. I wouldn't say it's very good at the moment. But it does say here, like, there is automatically generated text. You can replace it. And this can be done either before you finish posting or after you've already posted. So you can go back and enter, click the 3 dots in the top right corner, edit, type, and save. And this video on the left is a demonstration of editing the alt text after posting. Now on Instagram, same thing with Facebook. You can edit it before or after. It does not automatically generate any text itself. This video here we have on the left is an example of adding it before. There's a few clicks you have to make. It's not too obvious. I'm gonna wait for this video to play out and loop again. So at the bottom, when you've chosen your photo, you scroll down to advanced settings, and then scroll down again and write alt text, and then that's where you fill it out. Now for after, again, we're just hitting the 3 dots in the top right corner. You'll see a floating edit alt text on the image, and you edit and type away. Now you might have noticed that on social media now, people are adding alt text into the captions themselves. And this is just good to raise awareness and remind people that this is that there is a field that you should be going to, and just generally making our content more accessible. But you do still need to fill out that field. The caption is really just for awareness. Make sure you do go into your settings and edit your photos there. Now moving into websites. So Squarespace has one area where you can edit alt text. It's under the content settings for every image block. And it's just under the file name, parentheses optional. It's not as clear, and it's also a bit more limited on Squarespace. You can't edit, say, background images. You can only add in alt text under this file name field. Now for WordPress, there are 3 different areas. We have an area on the left image, or the screen cap, in the media library. And you can see they'll be on the right of your screen under the attachment details, and there's a box for alt text. There's also a link, and this links out to the standardized W3 decision tree. And this is an international committee. They create a lot of website standards. So it's a really good reference to have at hand while you're writing alt text. And then the next screen cap to the right is in the image settings. So that's when you are actually within a page, you're building it out, and you're clicking on the image. This will pop up on the right side bar. Again, there's another box and a link. And then lastly, you can edit it within the code itself in the HTML tag, as seen in the bottom right screen cap. Now for Shopify, there's also, again, only one place to edit it, and this is in the image itself. When, again, you're on a page, you just click on the image. You need to change the size. You can align center, right, or left, and also edit the alt text here. And while this wasn't specified for the other platforms we were looking at, Shopify does say that there is a max length of 512 characters here. And this should be pretty similar across other platforms, whether it's Twitter, any other socials, or any other website builders. So if you want to get a look at the results and see what it actually looks like, you can always double check your work through the inspect mode, just while you're scanning through a page. You can also download a browser extension. I've used Alt Text Tester, which I use on Chrome. You can see with this example here of a Luke's Lobster page, we have 4 different images, and in inspect, you can see that the images are written out in the code, and then the alt tag is filled out appropriately in that orange text. So just to wrap everything up and what we've covered, these are a few reminders we just want to say. There are several articles out there saying that there's a 125 character max limit that your alt text should be. This isn't officially written down. This just differs per platform. And there are several different screen reader technologies out there. And I know some of them do pause when they're at the 125 character limit, but they keep reading. So I wouldn't say it's a hard stop at all. And I wouldn't worry about writing your alt text, making sure it fits in that limit. Now, in terms of SEO, someone did an interesting article and they were testing it out, and it's linked here, but Google actually reads only the first 16 words in your alt text. So this is a good incentive to make sure, again, that your content is front loaded and that the most important parts are at the beginning. Any extra details are maybe in the latter sentence. Something Kes mentioned, and I just want to repeat, people can always skip alt text. So again, like, don't worry about making it too long. They can always skip it. They're just there to skim content. They can read as they please. It's always does tend to be better to provide more context when you can. And then in terms of writing out your text, well, it may not necessarily have the same tone and voice as the rest of your website copy does or your brand does, because you do want it to be pretty factual. You should still write keeping in mind what your website is. Like if it's an e-commerce store, you want to mention your actual products. If you really push for inclusion, you can mention genders, pronouns, and maybe ethnicity in your alt text for your images. Or maybe you push for you're very environmentally friendly. You can mention in your images that they're using reusable containers, that they're using glass and metal straws. So it's just nice to keep that context in mind and kind of bring it into your alt text, or remind your viewers and users like where they are and just the rest and how your business stands in general. And then last but not least, you should standardize your procedure. Your alt text is just as important as the rest of your website copy and your branding. And you should have either a person or a team, maybe it's us as your agency, double checking everything, making sure alt text is always written out where it needs to be, and then reviewing it when needed, making sure proper grammar is used, that we're not putting any emotions in there that are subjective, and just making sure that we have a full procedure and it's not just like left on the sidelines as an extra thing to look at when you have time, that it's really built into how you go about running your business. And then here I just have linked the decision tree that W3 offers. And this is a great walkthrough. This was what was also listed on WordPress. It walks you through based on your image, whether you should write alt text, whether it's decorative and should be left blank. It gives a lot of different examples there. So it's really nice to run through whenever you need extra help or information on what to write.
Cool. Thank you, Sabrina. That brings us to the end of our presentation. I think now is a good time to open it up to questions. Nate, do you mind facilitating this? And Sabrina and I can answer away.
Sure. No questions came through in the chat during that time. So if anyone does have questions who's on the call, feel free, chime in. You can unmute yourselves or type it in the chat. But yeah, open format right now. And one other thing, I know there's a couple people that joined mid-session. We are recording this and we'll have this available for you to view later. So just let me know if you were one of those people who came in a little bit late, and I'll send this over.
Can we get a copy of your PowerPoint presentation with the links and stuff in it?
Yeah, of course.
That'd be great.
Yeah. We will make sure to distribute this to everyone.
Thank you.
Kes, can you go back to our group screen?
Like where everyone is. Stop showing my screen.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Kes and Sabrina. I thought that was super informative and I liked your examples. It made it really tangible and definitely got my wheels turning about how we can all be more inclusive on the web.
Yeah, it's definitely a very, what seems like, it could seem like a daunting task, but once it's done, it's really going to help make sure that all users can view your content in the way that everyone should be able to.
Well, it seems like we got some alt-text experts here. After that, I would, if no one has any questions that are kind of jumping out, I would say let's keep this channel open for the follow-up. If things come up that you are reviewing during the presentation or you rewatch it, feel free to email myself, Kes, Sabrina, as well as Toby, who is our senior accessibility and inclusivity designer. A lot there, especially once you start really digging into this stuff. So please do not hesitate to reach out with any questions. All right.
I do have one question, because we have thousands of photos of our products. And I basically download the CSV file and I can do a concatenate to put the information together because it's just way too time consuming. I always put what the actual disc is with the color that we called it, and that way they know the weight of it. But as you're saying, to be descriptive of it, every disc has a different color foil and each foil has its own unique name. And it's like, should that be included in the alt text as well?
I'd say this depends on like if these are just like discs on a white background and if they're like going in and selecting colors, or if that's an option, like if that information's already being presented, then it kind of becomes one of those decorative, because if they can already tell what the colors are there, they can already see the size and read that information elsewhere, then repeating it in the image, I'd say isn't necessary. It's more for like maybe like a lifestyle photo of someone using those discs.
Right. Chelsea, Violet, and Jesse all know what I'm trying to say, because each foil, the disc could be red, but it could have an oil slick foil on it with the image, or a rainbow. I mean, there's hundreds of different names for these foils, and everybody gives it a different name for the same foil. So it's like, if the picture shows it, but if they can't see the photo, they don't know what color stamp it is. And that's going to make it more difficult.
I totally know what you're saying. And the question you kind of aren't asking is like, with that many product variants, and for people without products, maybe just like landing page variations with different photos on them. It sounds like you're asking like, how much effect would it have describing individual characteristics on different versions of photos? When I think about alt text, and I think Kes and Sabrina kind of mentioned different aspects to it, there's the inclusivity aspect to people who like can't see the products, and they probably care about like performance characteristics of the products, which they're getting from places that are not the photo alt text,
Right.
but also want to know maybe like, is it going to match things I have? So there it's of some importance. And from like an SEO perspective, it's going to depend how much traffic individual photo variants get, how much it's going to weight the like search result listings of each individual keywords. So I kind of like, I can't imagine that from an SEO perspective, like individual variant discrepant keywords are going to be a significant part of your organic search strategy of what you want to rank for. So like, while you don't necessarily want to just repeat the same alt text photo to photo, like I know you have spreadsheets where kind of like at scale you're editing these things. And if
Right.
the text is pulling from the product name, which includes that foil already,
Yeah.
I think you're probably set kind of just copy and pasting from
Right.
Road there, because you knowing your products often, you know, X disc in Y color with Z attribute as
Yeah.
a product name is like a pretty good piece of alt text for that product as well,
Okay.
because you're describing what's in the photo, because what's in
Right.
the photo is exactly the product. So if I were you, I wouldn't stress too much about
Right.
like in product variants alt
Yeah,
text.
I was afraid I was going to have to start adding the stamp color to the actual color because they're all different and each product has, now that I found the app, I actually have over 100 items for each product now.
Sure.
So that's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I think,
Sorry.
sorry.
I would say probably more important than the foil color itself would just be the context of the stamp. So if it's an illustrative stamp of a certain image, like you definitely want to convey that to the
Okay.
user, so that they know what's on the disc. You know, you wouldn't want someone getting a disc with like some crazy graphics on it and they don't know what it is.
okay,
Versus the specifics of like the oil slick film or whatever. That's probably less important.
okay. All right, I'll catch up with you and Chelsea when we go over the website again and see if, what I can do.
Yeah, I think just general like feedback would like for something like that. I know we talked about like e-commerce brands wanting to use like branded product names, but in an instance like that, I think using more generic, saying like blue foil instead of like Caribbean sea foil would be better in that instance.
That makes me think of like color best practices. I know color names of things get incredibly specific, especially with e-commerce coming from manufacturer, to a point that maybe someone who's visually impaired or no, probably people aren't searching for the color names as like Behr or the paint manufacturer might describe them to be. Is it a fair assumption that it's better to use the kind of assume there's 10 colors that people search for and use the one that's closest to the description? Or would it be better to use the like manufacturer used color in case people are searching, where can I buy something locally from the manufacturer site?
So one good example I saw is, at least this company was using really abstract terms for their colors, like Norwegian forest. And the user was like, I don't know what that means. So in that terms, like then you would want to like, maybe like that's included in the product title for that specific one, but then you do want to describe an actual like dark green, a dark warm green color.
That's good to know because we find that we were selling more by giving them unique color names like sunshine, sky. So if it's a blue disc, it's sky, or it could be ocean or water, because some of them have like a little swirly to them. Red is like brick or wagon, lipstick, you know, and those are the ones that sell. If we call it red, it sits. We've had discs that had the old way and they sit on our racks longer than the ones that had the unique color names.
Interesting. Maybe in that example, you can still use like wagon red does feel like a color.
Yeah.
Like if you pair it with the actual color name itself with the word.
Because that's like the black discs, which are heavily sought out, are midnight or coal, charcoal if it's leaded gray. White ones, which are also sought out, we call snow, marshmallow, you know, that type of stuff. And it's weird, it's just using different color names they've sold. All right, so I should put the primary color names in with the color name we're giving it.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay,
Yeah, and even if you don't change the title to say like ocean blue, as long as you put that in the alt text so people have the context.
yeah, see, what I do is I actually have a formula that I just saved, and what I do is I combine, when I do the CSV file through Shopify, I combine A2 with a space, with I2, a space, and then K2, so that way it gives me a different title for each 100 items, because I was always told don't use the same description on all of them, and Shopify gives one for all. So that's how I made it different, was combining the columns together.
Do we have any other specific questions or examples like that?
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Like Nate said, we will provide everyone a copy of our presentation along with our emails and Toby's email. So you guys, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll be able to help you out. Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Have a good day.
bye.